right. All right. Welcome back to the My Church broadcast. This is Pastor Sonny Primo, and I want to thank you for joining me today. We're going to pick right up in our study of God's plan and purpose for Israel. And I really am enjoying this, and I hope you're enjoying it too. It's information that we all need to have. All right, praise the name of Jesus. We left off when we were talking about the fifth cycle of punishment and what Daniel saw about it. Excuse me a moment. All right. All right. Let's back up a little bit here. We're going to cover the new covenant, but before we cover the new covenant, we need to briefly discuss an incident recorded in the book of Numbers. Now, talking about Balak and Balaam, when you read Numbers 22 through 24 and get familiar with it, it's the passage that deals with Balaam and how Balak wanted Balaam to curse Israel. And God knew exactly what Satan would do against Israel. He also knew that under the law contract, Israel was in a precarious position at that time. If Israel did not obey, she would suffer the curses stipulated in the law of Moses. Satan would love to exploit that, putting Israel in a position to receive curses. And the effort to get Balaam to curse Israel was Satan's attempt to get that process underway. Now, the message sent back to Satan was that even though Israel was under the law contract, God would work on her behalf according to his Jehovahness. God would still accomplish his plan and purpose with his nation. The message conveyed to Satan through the four parables spoken by Balaam was that Satan's plan against Israel would not prevail. Now examine the other aspects conveyed through this event on your own. But it's important to see what Satan attempted and how God responded. With that in mind, let's go to Deuteronomy 29, which puts us in the time just before Israel crossed over the Jordan River and into the land. Now at this point, Moses was still alive, as Moses died before the people actually entered the land under Joshua's leadership. In the preceding chapters, the law was reviewed for the new generation that was about to enter the land. In chapter 28, the curses were covered in some detail. If you recall to our last session, we ran some references to this chapter to observe details of the punishments contained in the 5 cycles. Now, after going over the curses in chapter 28, God spoke to Moses about an additional covenant with Israel. Deuteronomy 29, verse 1. These are the words of the covenant which the Lord commanded Moses to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, beside the covenant which he made with them in Horeb. The covenant in Horeb was the law Israel received at Mount Sinai. In the previous chapters, the details of the law had been reviewed. God intended for the agreement along with its attendant blessings and curses to be fresh in the people's minds as they entered the land. However, God also wanted to enter into an additional covenant with his people. It was a covenant different from the law covenant, in that it was not based on Israel's performance. It was unconditional, based on God's Jehovahness and grace. This new covenant was related to what God knew would occur in time. He knew Israel would receive the curses of the law rather than the blessings. Why? Well, because Israel just could not keep the law contract. As there's nobody that could really keep the law contract except Jesus himself. The nation could not succeed alone, and he knew the policy of evil against Israel would prevail. Israel would eventually be expelled out of the land, and God not only knew all of this, but warned Israel regarding what he knew would happen. Excuse me. Deuteronomy 29 verse 20, it says, "The Lord will not spare him, but then the anger of the Lord and his jealousy shall smoke against that man, and all the curses that are written in this book shall lie upon him, and the Lord shall blot out his name from under heaven." Because God knew what was going to happen, he entered into an additional covenant with Israel. The new covenant provided for God to put into effect his Jehovah's and grace when they fell under the fifth cycle of judgment. Without God providing for them according to his name and giving it to them as a gift by his grace, Israel would never survive the fifth cycle of punishments. They would be completely wiped out otherwise. Instead, God said he will deliver them, a remnant, from the annihilation to be faced in the fifth cycle, and will make Israel into that great nation she needs to become. God will, by his faithfulness and his promises and his unlimited resources, establish his kingdom on earth. He will make Israel into all she was supposed to be, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. This is the purpose of this additional covenant. It was an unconditional, one-sided new covenant. And to fulfill it, God said he would take the initiative. Deuteronomy chapter 30 verse 1 says, "And it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee." Stop here and ask yourself, when did Israel get driven out of her land and into the other nations? That did not occur until the fifth cycle of judgment. Thus, we see when this covenant will come into effect. When did the fifth cycle begin? It commenced with the carrying away of the southern kingdom of Judah, along with the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple. Verse 2, Deuteronomy 30. "And shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shalt obey his voice, according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity, and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And the Lord thy God will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it. And he will do thee good, and multiply thee above thy fathers. And the Lord thy God will circumcise thine heart, and the heart of thy seed, to love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live." Notice the parts in this new covenant. Israel will return to the Lord and obey his voice. God will turn Israel's captivity and regather her to the land. Israel will possess the land in a great multitude, and God will change Israel's heart to love the Lord. The nation's problem all along was a heart problem, and this covenant was meant to fix it. Now, what do we call this new covenant? It is the covenant of God's Jehovah's. This one will not be put in the Ark of the Covenant, which represented the old covenant of the law of Moses. Incidentally, the other two actions God and Moses do can be found in Deuteronomy 32 and chapters 32 and 33. Since they are included in the scriptures, it goes without saying that they are important. For the purpose of this study, we will not be spending time on them, but I will point them out so that you can study them on your own. In Deuteronomy chapter 32, the Song of Moses was used to explain to the nation how they would follow the course Satan charted. It also described the results of their disobedience. And Deuteronomy chapter 23 describes how Moses blessed each tribe according to God's Jehovah's and grace. Again, the blessing God had for each of the tribes was dependent upon his Jehovah's and grace. With this background, we are now able to follow each of the cycles of punishment through the scripture, noting the markers for each. All right, we're going to talk about the first cycle of judgment. That's good coffee. Joshua led Israel into the land. Now, as we move into the book of Joshua, you will see that after Moses had died, Joshua gave orders to Israel to prepare to move into the land. Joshua 1:1. Now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread, every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. Drop down to verse 10. It says, Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, saying, Pass through the host, and command the people, saying, Prepare you victuals, for within 3 days ye shall pass over this Jordan, to go in to possess the land which the Lord your God giveth you to possess it. In Joshua chapter 3, the people passed over the Jordan to enter the land promised in the Abrahamic covenant. Look at verse 1, chapter 3. And Joshua arose early in the morning, and they removed from Shittim, and they came to Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. And it came to pass after 3 days that the officers went through the host, and they commanded the people, saying, When ye see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests the Levites bearing it, then ye shall remove from your place and go after it. Now, although there is a lot of action, we will mention only a few key events. Israel crossed into the land in a similar manner as out of Egypt, with the parting of the waters and a crossing over dry ground. You don't hear that talked about very much, but everybody wants to disprove the Red Sea crossing. 12 stones were put down at the Jordan when Israel crossed. These are significant. In chapter 5, the captain of the Lord's host met Joshua before the first engagement at Jericho. The conquest of the land, which began under Joshua, went fairly well. Jericho was the first city to fall. The angel of the Lord went before the people, and they began to possess the land. During this time, the nation received blessings from the hand of the Lord. And now it's important to note that the first cycle did not begin until during the time recorded in the book of Joshua. However, the groundwork for Israel's rebelliousness was already being laid in Joshua's time. Recognizing this, Joshua anticipated that the conquering of the land would not continue after his generation. He was keenly aware of that. He was keenly aware that if that happened, the first cycle punishments would come upon the nation. Joshua chapter 23, verse 1. And I'll pause till you get there. Joshua 23, verse 1. And it came to pass, a long time after the Lord had given rest unto Israel from all her enemies round about, that Joshua waxed old and stricken in age. And Joshua called for all Israel, and for their elders, and for their heads, and for their judges, and for their officers, and said unto them, I am old and stricken in age, and ye have seen all that the Lord your God hath done unto all these nations, because of you. For the Lord your God is he that hath fought for you. Behold, I have divided unto you by lot these nations that remain, to be an inheritance for your tribes, from Jordan and all the nations that I have cut off, even unto the great sea westward. And the Lord your God shall expel them from before you, and drive them out from your sight, and ye shall possess their land, as the Lord your God hath promised unto you. Be ye therefore very courageous to keep and do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, that ye turn not aside therefrom to the right hand or to the left, that ye come not among these nations, these that remain among you, neither make mention of the name of their gods, nor cause to swear by them, neither serve them, nor bow yourselves unto them, but cleave unto the Lord your God, as ye have done unto this day. For the Lord hath driven out from before you great nations and strong. But as for you, no man hath been able to stand before you unto this day. One man of you shall chase 1,000. For the Lord your God, he it is that fighteth for you, and he hath promised you. Joshua saw the foundation for rebellion being laid all the way back to the incident with Achan, when Israel lost her battle with the small city of Ai. Look at Joshua 7, verse 10. And the Lord said unto Joshua, Get thee up, wherefore liest thou thus upon thy face? Israel hath sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant which I commanded them. For they have even taken of the accursed thing, and have also stolen and disassembled also, and they have put it even among their own stuff. Therefore the children of Israel could not stand before their enemies, but turned their backs before their enemies, because they were accursed. Neither will I be with you any more, except ye destroy the accursed from among you. Now, as early as that time, the adversary was making headway. Joshua remembered and warned the nation that the curses of the law could and would actually come upon them. Joshua 23:14. And behold, this day I am going the way of all the earth. And ye know in all your hearts and in all your souls that not one thing hath failed of all the good things which the Lord your God spake concerning you. All are come to pass unto you, and not one thing hath failed thereof. Therefore it shall come to pass, that as all good things are come upon you, which the Lord your God promised you, so shall the Lord bring upon you all evil things, until he hath destroyed you from off this good land, which the Lord your God hath given you. When ye have transgressed the covenant of the Lord your God, which he commanded you, and have gone and served other gods, and bowed yourselves to them, then shall the anger of the Lord be kindled against you, and ye shall perish quickly from off the good land which he hath given unto you. Think about what Joshua knew. He was aware of the song of Moses, which testified that Israel would turn from the Lord and walk according to the dictates of Satan. He had seen the early signs of rebellion starting at Ai and continuing on. Joshua knew the land had not yet been completely conquered and there was more to do. He knew that the curses were the consequences of breaking God's covenant. So he tried to head off what he saw coming. And in Joshua 24, Joshua confronted the leaders of Israel on the day before he died. And God reminded Israel of his Jehovah's provision. Joshua 24 verse 1. And Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem, and called for the elders of Israel, and for their heads, and for their judges, and for their officers, and they presented themselves before God. And I have given you a land for which ye did not labor, and cities which ye built not, and ye dwell in them. Of the vineyards and olive yards which ye planted not, do ye eat. The cities were those their enemies had built. The vineyards and such were planted before Israel came into the land. Instead of earning them, God gave them to Israel. They were provided by the Lord. Verse 14, Now therefore fear the Lord, and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood, and in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord. If we were standing among the leaders assembled around Joshua and heard his instructions, what would we understand was happening? There must have been some gods being served that were forbidden. Thus Joshua demanded Israel to make a decision. What was in their hearts was made manifest. When you read the chapter, you find that God took Abraham out of the midst of those who served false gods and sanctified him unto himself. Joshua knew that the idols worshipped in Egypt, in the midst of Satan's hotbed of false god worship, had been brought into the land. The people were attempted to go back to them, as that was Satan's plan. Joshua knew the first cycle punishments awaited if Israel didn't turn away from those false gods. Joshua 24 verse 15, And if it seemed evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom ye will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites, or in those in whose lands ye dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And the people answered and said, God forbid that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. For the Lord our God, he it is that brought us up and our fathers out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage, and which did those great signs in our sight, and preserved us in all the way wherein we went. And among all the people through whom we passed. And the Lord drave out from before us all the people, even the Amorites which dwelt in the land. Therefore we also serve the Lord, for he is our God. Now I need to stop this right here, and we'll pick this back up when we come back. We'll pick this back up right where we left off. Alright? This is Pastor Sonny saying thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next session. We'll continue right where we left off with God's plan and purpose for Israel. Until then, God bless.